Hey, I'm Mets and TFT in the game, I guess. I'm just going to make a quick video kind of running through what I've done with the crit Invoker Monk. I'm not playing CI on this. You definitely could if you wanted to, invest in having a little bit more energy shield. Or if you're fine just running around with Grim Feast and, less energy shield either way. Obviously, res cap, all the normal stuff. I'm not running acrobatics because I'm not really stacking a whole lot of evasion. Kind of the PoE 1 fill of if everything is dead, why am I worried about it hitting me? Got a lot of spirit basically from having a high ES and energy shield chest, or evasion rating and energy shield chest. You could, if you wanted to, go for like a pure evasion rating chest, and that you could get enough spirit to fit everything in. I don't know if that's more or less expensive than a hybrid, but you could do that. This is probably enough to make up that raw energy shield if you go that way, because it's giving me a pretty good amount, and I'm not anywhere near what a raw evasion chest could get to, because you can get those to like 3k roughly. My chest piece is probably the next thing I'll look to upgrade, because it's fine, but it's not, anything amazing. Just to go through the gear right quick, this is a staff that I made myself. There's only like one other one that I've found on the market that might be better. But this one has a higher crit, so it's probably about as good. It's got flat lightning. Flat fizz would have probably been a little bit better, but it's not as bad in this game as it is PoE 2, just because you don't double dip on conversions. Or because like in PoE 1 you can scale fizz and lightning and cold, and it benefits from all of that. But in PoE 2 the skills convert it, so that 80% of your physical from your weapon just is cold. So it doesn't benefit from physical and cold spelling or scaling. This one's also on like a base with increased range, so that's kind of nice, but not really necessary. We're playing Ingenuity. That's another place I could upgrade, but 78%, it kind of does what it does. I plugged it into POB and the difference isn't really that significant. I bring up POB in this, but I still need to update it a little bit. I've changed some things around, so some of this is not up to date. Most of it is. There's a few things that don't work. So probably after I finish recording this, I'll update this, get everything right, and put a link in the video description. But this is close. It's probably going to be a little bit higher, actually, after I import everything properly, because I was testing some stuff here that I changed. Like, I'm not running this crit damage jewel. It's technically a little bit better than... where's the real ones? Technically a little bit better than these, like crit chance plus crit damage, because I think in game I'm actually overcapped on crit. But the difference was pretty small, and I would rather just always be critting, because this, I'm not sure if this is 100% capturing like sunder my enemies correctly. Like, I did put it into the config, but yeah, there's still some work to do with PLB before I really want to just be doing a video purely on PLB. Anyway, so we talked about Ingenuity, rings, the highest flat rolls you can get, and cover your resistances. You could also get like percent to cold or percent to lightning, and either or both of those are probably good. I've just kind of got what I needed to cover resist, and then rarity, since seems like they're not going to nerf rarity anytime soon. So I've got 259% in this gear set. Kind of the same with the other ring. Rarity, resist, flat damage, whatever you can find and or afford. The chest piece, again, you just want as high a defenses as you can get for spirit scaling and, defensiveness. There's not a whole lot you can really do with suffixes besides resists or stats, so you might as well get resist there. Helmet is kind of how I got crit. Well, I don't know if I still need it for crit cap, but it can definitely help until you've got, you know, kind of the crazy adorned setup that I do. So evasion ES, if you want to move some points around to be more defensive, like say you're playing hardcore or just like dying less, you could move some stuff around and take subterfuge mask and just take a pure energy shield helmet. And that's probably better overall, but it is a lot of travel points. So it's not something I'm doing because I don't feel like I need it. It's another spot you can get rarity. The crit chance is probably the most important role here. Everything else is kind of just what I was able to find with crit and the resistance that I needed. Which at this point I could probably like re-roll this or something, but whatever. Amulet. This is what I settled on. You will get higher DPS if you take like a plus melee skills amulet. But then your mana cost balloons and the build's already kind of mana starved on bosses. It's fine in mapping, not a problem at all, but for bosses, mana's kind of an issue, so taking plus skills just isn't worth it. Boots, just standard stuff. Movement speed, resists if you need them. I don't need them on my boots, so I just have Dex and Int to scale Hands of Wisdom and what is it, anger? Action. Wisdom and action. I got a little bit of rarity on these, but the main thing was just 35% movement speed and life. The rest of it was just whatever I could get. Hands of Wisdom and action. I don't have a 4% 12 pair, but these have high stats, 4% attack speed. The difference in going to a 1 to 12 lightning is pretty small because we're not really scaling stats in this build. Like I have a decent amount just because there's not really anything else to do with suffixes on a few slots, but yeah. Health flask. I've not even really bothered to mess with this because I almost never need it. But you'd want like increased amount recovered and something useful on the suffix, whatever you want to get. But this thing has 1600 life. I have 1800, so it's going to restore basically my whole life. This is kind of necessary for bossing. Otherwise, mana is an issue. There's other ways to solve mana, so you could if you want. But this is what I'm doing. None of the rolls on this matter at all. Just quality it, put it on. That's all that matters. I'm using a freezing charm because nothing else really does all that much, and being frozen sucks. I don't need this that often, but it helps with like strong boxes now that they don't suck and they're usually worth clicking on. So yeah, that's the reason for that. I'm not doing any kind of like weapon swap blink stuff. You could if you want. There's not really a reason you can't. Why is that? I don't want it to be on weapon 2. That's annoying. Okay, whatever. Okay, so skills. Quarterstaff strike, I put some stuff into while I was kind of messing around with other options for mana, but I don't actually use this for anything. Ice strike, that's bread and butter skill. Concentrated effect is just a massive amount of more multiplier. It has that downside of less AoE, but it doesn't have an AoE, so this doesn't actually do anything. I don't know if they intend for this gem to really work, but it does. It's got the AoE tag. I don't know why, but it does. Martial tempo, more attack speed. More attack speed is really good. I am scaling this build for average hit damage. So if you really wanted to, you could probably put this for like a pure DPS setup and get to 600-700k, maybe more, by scaling attack speed. But I'm doing very little attack speed scaling. I'm going for just single big hits, freeze stuff quickly, make the screen explode. It's got enough damage for T4 bossing. I'll probably buy a Breachstone in a bit just to show, but this can kill T4 Zest in less than 10 seconds. Primal Armament, just because it's the next best one. You could swap this for something else just to help with mana, because this is one of the mana multipliers that I'm using. Ice Bite, this one applies when you freeze, so it's worth keeping on Ice Strike. There's plenty of people that put this on like Herald of Thunder, and that's fine, but it does nothing when you're bossing, so I just keep it on Ice Strike. And then Heft, just because we have a 6th slot and it's the best DPS one to put in there. I've thought about messing around with the idea of like Elemental Focus or something, but then Ice Strike isn't freezing, so I'm not sure that's really worth doing. Nothing else particularly good to put in there. Like, to look at POV, I've got it set to search by full DPS. It's going to show Biting Frost, which means you're going to eat your freeze and you can't freeze, so it's not good. I don't know why it thinks Minion Pact would work. There might be a thing of we run a permanent minion just to do something with this, but you have to be able to do this consistently, and I don't have gem slots. I've thought about dropping Combat Frenzy and Infusion just because I'm so close to crit cap even without it. So that might be a thing to run just a minion with, you know, health supports to try to just have Minion Pack always go off with Ice Strike and, you know, be another, what, 40% damage almost. So that's an option. And it doesn't cost mana, so maybe something worth figuring out at some point. Supercritical's bugged in POV. I think even as much crit as I have, it's still not worth doing because it just adds 100%. I have almost 900%, so it's adding, you know, around 10% more damage. And, you know, look at any other support gem, they're averaging about 25%. So it's not good for this build. If you were like a much, much lower crit multiplier build that just had crazy crit chance somehow, it might be all right. But as it is right now, it's just bad. If it didn't decrease crit chance, it'd maybe be okay, but still not very good. If it was a more multiplier, it would be insane, which is what POB kind of thinks it is. POB is adding it as base crit bonus, so like the same as crit bonus on your weapon, which is insane. But that's not what it actually does. I'm not really sure why it thinks armor explosion works. We're not breaking armor, so this would never do anything. It's another option to look into. I mean, I'm not doing a ton of physical damage, but maybe enough to break armor anyway. Like, that's not a ton, but it's a decent amount. Like, we talked about Elemental Focus and why I'm not doing that. Innervate requires a kill, so I keep it on Herald of Ice. Immolate I have on Charged Staff. There's not a particular reason not to run it, so it might be worth trying putting Immolate on Ice Strike and moving Heft somewhere else. Heft is the bottom one that you would drop. So Immolate probably is better. I just don't know for sure how good my uptime on my Ignite really is. It says 97%, and I guess that's based on crit. So yeah, Immolate is probably just better than Heft in this build because I believe Charged Staff is also gonna have... Oh, Charged Staff can't Ignite. Oh, that's the buff part. Shockwave. There we go. Oh, it can't Ignite. It does fire damage. Huh. Maybe it can't. No, it's got crit. I don't understand why that doesn't work. Maybe a POB error. I haven't actually tested it. But that would maybe be the thing to do, is move Immolate to Ice Strike and put something else on Charged Staff and just have Charged Staff be the thing igniting. But either way. Yeah, and then just heft is your round out. So Herald of Ice, like, you can see my Heralds are doing kind of insane damage. They just one-shot everything. Deli bosses, whatever. If I had a way to have them hit bosses, they would one-shot most map bosses, I think. But yeah. Cold Mastery, just to have something to put there. If there's some other utility that you would prefer to be on Herald, or especially while you're gearing up, if you want to put like Ambush or Inevitable critical or something like that, that's not bad either. I just don't need it anymore, so I opted for this. Conduction, just to help with chance to shock. I don't think I need this anymore just because my lightning damage is basically equal. But it's helpful until you have crazy gear because your lightning damage isn't going to be all that high. Magnitude of Shock, just to have it put higher shocks on so it's more likely for Herald of Thunder to actually kill things. Because I don't have enough cold added that Herald of Thunder is able to drop cold infusion. Innervate, just, you know, Herald of Ice is always hitting shocked enemies, so Innervate is basically always up while mapping. And then Magnified Effect, just to give Herald of Ice more area of effect, so we're killing more things. Herald of Thunder, Glaciation for more chance to freeze, because Herald of Thunder is what's freezing to trigger Herald of Ice, and, you know, they trigger each other. That's the whole thing. Long Shot, just because it's probably the most efficient damage boost that I have access to. Mana cost doesn't matter, but yeah, basically the farther something is away, the more damage Herald of Thunder is going to do. Shock Siphon, I'm not 100% sure this actually works, but it kind of seems like it does. It's just, a lot of times Herald of Ice is sniping the kills, but I don't have a whole lot else to put here, and it works sometimes, so good enough. Cold Infusion, so that Herald of Thunder is doing enough cold damage to freeze. And Lightning Mastery, just because I didn't really have anything else to put here, so I put Lightning Mastery. Just for the extra level, do more flat damage. Tempest Bell. So we got Heavy Swing just to buff the damage on Tempest Bell. Ruthless, because I had another slot to put something and it's not completely useless. You'll see when I do the Breachstone that, like, I'm stunning reasonably quickly, and Ruthless is a decent part of that. Overabundance, so that, say you drop one bell, you can actually build combo to drop the second bell at the same time. We're attacking fast enough that I rarely have two bells up at once. But this way you can just chain them back to back to back. Font of Rage for rage regen. So you basically have full rage while you're bossing. That's what that's mostly for. And Culling Strike, just because I needed to put it somewhere and might as well put it on Tempest Spell. Charge Staff. This is what we're using power charges for primarily, as well as Charge Infusion. But with Persistence, this one, increasing the duration. Charge Staff is effectively like 50 seconds at full stacks. And the way it works is you essentially press the button to feed Charge Staff power charges, and it adds cooldown. It stacks up to 5. You do not need to use a 5 stack of power charges. You can just do a total of 5, and then you can refresh it with ever how many you have. So don't feel like you need to sit there and wait until you have exactly 5. You can just send it. It's fine. I've got Neural Overload, so I can electrocute my bell and electrocute enemies. This actually works fairly well. It does mean that Charge Staff, I think, can't... Oh, no, it can shock. Or... I don't know. I'm definitely electrocuting things, and I know there's another electrocute support. We talked about Immolate. It's just here to put it somewhere. Unbreakable. I'm pretty sure this works. POB thinks it works, but POB is kind of buggy. But basically, as long as Charge Staff is active, I have more stun threshold, which means instead of having 2k life plus whatever ES contribution, my stun threshold is like 6,000 almost. So don't get stunned too often, and when I do, it's not for very long. And then Fiery Death, just so we have Exploding. When I'm mapping, and you'll see this in a little bit, I'm mostly just sending Charged Staff strikes into things. Like, I'm not getting all the way into melee to attack, just because Charged Staff does enough generally that it starts the Herald chain. I'm not sure exactly how it's managing that, but it does. Grim Feast, because Grim Feast. You get overcharged energy shield. It's great sustain. It basically solos ritual for you. So it's really good. Combat Frenzy is how we're getting power charges. We're freezing and electrocuting. So basically anytime you're attacking while mapping, you're generating power charge. Profusion is good because sometimes you'll generate 2 instead of 1. I've got Clarity for mana regen just because I had the Spirit. I've got 26 Spirit and I'm using every single possible gem that eats Spirit. Without using an unset ring, I can't really do anything else. Precision, I don't think I even need this, but it's there, because why not? You can look at your own accuracy if you don't have an insane chest piece and don't have enough Spirit. But you can see with the amount of decks I have, like, this doesn't really do anything, but it's there. Charging Fusion is 20% more crit. That's the part of it that we're actually taking advantage of. Or actually 38%, I guess. I didn't realize this scaled up with something. But it does say it's 38%. What is this scaling with? Because it's supposed to be 19%. It's definitely not 38%, because I would have been crit capped a long time ago. So I'm not really sure what the tooltip is going on about here. But if once I upgrade this to level 20, it'll be 20% more crit. It's 19%. Yeah. Cannibalism is really good. We don't we don't take advantage of it that often just because energy shield, but it's really good if you're ever missing life, because you just kill one pack and you're full health now. Wind Dancer is great defensively. It gives 19% more evasion rating per stage, stacks up to 4 at full quality. So almost 80% more evasion, which is kind of crazy. What I've put on it is mostly for if I'm actually taking a hit, Wind Dancer will proc Gale Force. When Gale Force goes off, if I got stunned by that hit, my energy shield recharge starts. It will blind anything that it hits, which can help with, continuing to evade whatever actually managed to hit you. Bludgeon for knockback, just to get a little space, and Maim to slow them, and I believe it reduces evasion rating. So all of that is basically just defensive. If I actually get hit, all of that stuff happens, as well as a pretty sizable amount of damage from Gale Force. Like, it's going off and doing 32,000 damage. And that's also going to scale up with all of our conditionals and stuff. Okay. So that's all the skills. We talked about gear and why I did what I did with that. So let's talk tree. If you like movement speed, you can take Step with Mist. I just dropped it because I wanted all of these gem slots. So you can kind of see that I'm roughly halfway around the tree, and I grabbed all of these in the middle. But if you don't have the funds to get good jewels that are better than skill points, you can take some other things. So just went up this way for skill speed, crit bonus, some stats and attack speed. Went here for increased damage if I've crit, because we're a crit build, so that's basically always up. Went here just because it's a good chunk of evasion and energy shield. If you truly don't care about that, you could drop these for even more damage. Kind of the same here. Evasion and energy shield, and I mostly went here just because it was cheap and easy movement speed. So this is not at all like mandatory points. You could drop these two if you don't care about the 3% move speed. There's probably better places to put those. I dropped these because I'm crit capped, so this node doesn't really do the good part of it anymore. I'm not dealing non-crits, so I don't get that bonus. So I dropped this whole node. But if you're still in like the 50 to 60% range, or even 70%, these 3 points are really good. Just without the crit bonus from Moment of Truth, it wasn't worth it for me, so I dropped it. Travel stats, just whatever you need. Don't worry about it too much. Like, you can min-max Hoa, but it doesn't make that much difference. So I've just got exactly enough strength to be able to equip all the supports I'm using. I could probably drop a few of these strength supports that aren't really doing a whole lot and, drop some strength. But another, 1 to 10 lightning or 4% attack speed isn't making or breaking the build. So I've not, really min-maxed that. The thing that's probably most important for at least early on until you're really high crit is resonance, because combat frenzy is generating frenzy charges, but you need power charges to get the more crit bonus. So resonance is what enables that. This was just the most efficient way to take these crit nodes. They're all good. And then this travel, just because this is really good evasion and energy shield, some reduced curse effect, and it's on the way to another jewel slot. I'll go through all the jewels after we cover the rest of the tree. Another jewel slot here, come out to here. This one is functionally 60% crit damage bonus and +2 power charges. Maximum power charges are good because they increase the buff you're getting from your charged staff as well as its duration. So it's worth the point, I think. It's not like PoE 1 where power charges have like an innate bonus by default. But it's nice to have for fill of the build and maximum stacks on charged staff and that having charge infusion up all the time, etc. This is another one where the direction you go doesn't really matter, but this is a big chunk of crit. I might play around with dropping this once I update POV just to see if it's worth. But the thing is, and I could show this by respecking, but I'm not going to bother. This says reduced crit damage bonus. Normally, that would be like a less multiplier in PoE. This one is not. It's just straight up 20% less crit bonus. So like right now I've got 628. This would just drop me to 608. So it's not a very big downside, and you get a big chunk of crit out of it. So went this way for another jewel slot, another jewel slot, and another jewel slot. This one's kind of a stretch because it's 5 points, but with good enough jewels, it's worth it with Adorned. I grabbed this just because it's a big chunk of energy shield, and it's on the way anyway. Kind of same thing with these, just big chunks of evasion and energy shield. These are kind of the same thing that says reduced crit chance, but it's just flat 20%. It's not 20% less, it's just minus 20%. So you're trading 20% crit chance for 60% bonus, which is a pretty good trade. Over here, we take some attack speed, some crit bonus, some dex, some more crit bonus. I found that this was basically useless because It doesn't do anything for combat infusion. And because of the way charged staff works, this doesn't really do anything for that either. So it's a waste of a point. If you need crit chance, these nodes aren't bad. If you care about scaling raw DPS instead of hit damage, you could take these points for some pretty efficient attack speed. The knockback isn't terrible. Early on, if you're having trouble freezing, you could path through these nodes for some pretty efficient freeze buildup, as well as 30% defenses, which includes energy shield. So it's not bad. Path of Building doesn't give you these bonuses. I'm actually missing 24% increased damage now that I think about it, because I didn't code these in. Or those might work actually. Okay, yeah, the smalls work. The notable doesn't work. So that's what this increased cold and lightning damage are in the Path of Building. The 60% crit bonus is for the ones we talked about here before overflowing power. That's just adding that in. The 2 evasion rating is because this node doesn't actually work. It doesn't do anything. It works in game, it just doesn't work in Path of Building. So this was just a number that I estimated and got it pretty close to matching what I have in game. More crit chance is because, as far as I could tell, Charge Infusion doesn't actually do anything in Path of Building. So I just added it. And then critical hits, ignore enemy monster elemental resistances are because I saw from another unique that effect working. But if you look at Sunder My Enemies, it doesn't do anything. So that line of text functionally does the same thing, even though it doesn't read exactly the same. It would probably give you some issues if you tried to use anything like exposure where you can actually go negative. But it's close enough as long as you're not trying to do anything weird that it's not really meant for. These again are just efficient evasion rating and dexterity. More dexterity nodes, path to another jewel slot. These points to reaching strike are really efficient for damage because we don't have a whole lot of increased, and we have a ton of base damage from Hoa and from charge staff. Reaching strike is also giving you a little strike range, which is essentially like saying your quarterstaff is 2 meters longer. I path this way because I don't need the crit chance, but if you're very low crit chance, these two are functionally about the same. But all these nodes are very good. This is 1% base crit, which is a pretty crazy node. And then just path down to a jewel. So my setup is an Adorned setup. Obviously that's very expensive, so if you don't have the currency to do that, you can kind of take some more crit on the tree. You could maybe use like some timeless jewels to get some extra crit chance, that sort of thing. But I'm playing Adorned, so let's talk about Adorned. I've got 88%. I haven't done the math to see what the next breakpoint that would actually be useful is, but this is a breakpoint for the main jewels that I'm using. So I've got 1 rage on hit. I'm not entirely sure this is worth it because it's not really enough to keep it up while mapping that much. It's probably still worth it versus anything else because you could get, let's say like one of these 30% increased damage, but rage gives 1% more damage per rage. So even if you're only staying at like 10, that's 10% more damage. And we don't really have a whole lot of sources of global more in this game, so rage is kind of insane. So having some rage is really good even if you're not capping it. Unfortunately, rage on hit only comes from rubies, so you kind of don't have a lot of good options. Increased attack damage would be the best combo, but you could also run like increased melee damage with Rage on hit, and that would be fine. Not as good, but fine. Because attack damage is scaling your heralds and everything else, whereas melee damage would only, I think, only affect charge staff. The general combo that I've been going for everywhere else that I possibly can is increased crit chance with attacks and increased damage with quarterstaves, because those two modifiers can both go to 16%. So it's 1% higher than all the other modifiers. So like that's the best in slot, best possible combination. There's not that many of them on the market that are well rolled. You could go cheaper and go with like 13 or 14% rolls, but you know, obviously it's not going to scale as high. So I've got just a ton of those all over the tree. I got lucky with this one and hit Dex implicit, which is really good. So like a 16-16 is going to give you 30% of each, and then 16 dexterity from the 9 dexterity. A 15% with an 88% adorned is 28. So that 1 extra percent does matter because it is scaling up. But it's going to depend on your adorned. So some math you can do. Like say you have 70% adorned and you've got a 15% jewel. You'd multiply 15% by I said what, 70% jewel? Yeah, so 15% times 1.7 gives you 25.5, which should mean that it goes up to 25. So it's not that complex to do. You could also just plug it in POB, but currently Adorned does not work in POB. And then for mana, you want one of these. This is the best combo. I made this one. But 2% mana, which scales up to 3% as long as you have at least a 50% adorned. It'd go up to 4% if you had 100% adorned, but that's very expensive. The cold res helps drop resistance off of parts of our gear, because 9% resistance is 16% with this adorned, 18% with a perfect adorned. And then it's a sapphire, so you just have limited options as far as what prefixes are actually useful. Elemental damage is worse than attack damage, but it's still pretty good. I think that covers all the build. We've covered gear, we've covered the passive tree, we've covered the adorned setup and the jewels I'm going for. Ascendancy, I guess. So we go for this one because it solves spirit for us on just having a good body armor, which is something we want to do anyway. Until they fix armor, I don't really care for this because we have less evasion to marginally reduce some physical damage. This basically does nothing in in-game mapping, so I dropped it. This one is why we don't need exposure or anything, because if we crit, enemies don't have resistances. This basically says enemy monsters have 0 resistance when you crit. I'm crit capped, so enemy monsters have 0 resistances. I do not believe it works in a way that you could put in exposure and have that actually do anything. But maybe it does work in that way. But the node currently doesn't work in POB, so I can't use POB to check, and it would be really hard to figure out whether that's working in game. And then I just took these two for 10% extra damages each and the shocking chilled ground. You could play Unbound Avatar if you want. I don't want buttons, so I'm not using it. But if you want to deal with that, you can. I just have auto attack for some stuff I was doing with mana, charge staff, ice strike, bell. That's it. That's all the active skills in the build. That's like one of the main draws, I think, is while mapping, it's functionally just ice strike. Like you hit this every, 40 seconds or so. But really, you're just running around one-tapping screens with Ice Strike, and that's all that you're doing. So to show the build off a bit, let me see if I can find a half-decent map. Yeah, Fortress isn't bad. Blooming Field is probably better. Let's do that one. So we're using rarity map. It's got plus monsters. Rare monsters have additional mod. Let's do something a little... Yeah, there we go. Rare monsters, quant, plus resistances, so you can kind of see the build just not caring at all about that. And then I'll get a Breachstone to do after this map. Okay. So right at the beginning, the first couple of things you kill, you're not going to have charge staff. So kill a thing or two, get some power charges, charge staff. Probably just for the sake of showing this off without taking too long, I'm not really going to bother looting. Unless it's worth a fair amount. But you can kind of see just, as long as there's enough density, things just kind of chain die. And like charge staff is usually enough. You generally don't have to hit anything with Ice Strike unless it's quite tanky. I was hoping some enemies would stay near Kosis so you could see them just die to the Heralds. Like you can see with buffs up, we're getting like near 1.5 million roughly, sometimes higher, but in the ballpark of 1 mil plus with buffs up. I didn't even look what the mod is, because the only one that's kind of annoying is the tornado, just because it follows you, but you can pretty much just hold right click and wait for everything to go away, and that's it. Yeah, I'm kind of a slower mapper, but you see how fast stuff is dying. You could speed this up a lot if you're a more efficient player than I am, I'm sure. If you want to do like a weapon swap blink setup, that would make it a lot faster too. I just don't care to do that. I want to just right click things and pick up loot. This build can probably do bossing. I don't care to learn boss fights, so I just don't really. You might want to go a little more defensive if you're trying to boss, just so you can live a hit. This one's got enough HP that it can live, non-slam type damage. Okay, we found our breach. So this is kind of where this double Herald thing really shines. Because this breach is just going to kind of look empty most of the time just because things are dying. And this one's kind of empty, I guess, just because we don't have, like, pack size on the map. And they nerfed Breach. Where is it? Oh. Having a weapon swap Breach would be nice for like that kind of scenario where I was stuck behind a chest-high wall, like we're playing Call of Duty or something. Didn't really get any drops there. How are we still not below 200 monsters? Oh, this is the one with the cloud that does something. I've never bothered to read what it actually does. Where is the remaining alive thing? It thinks there's something here. Anything worth buying? Sure, 1x. Okay. And then we got one more rare up there. I do want the tablet. Ah. Another chest-high wall is here to stop us. Yeah, so, I mean, as you can see, nice quick clear. We were basically never in any danger from anything because it was just dead. Which is how I like to play the game and how people liked to play PoE 1. So let me buy a Breachstone real quick. And we'll run that, and that'll be about it for the video. So... Breachstone, Exalts. Oh, they went up in price a little bit. But this way, at least as part of this video, you can, you know, see that the build can kill bosses pretty quickly. I have a separate video that's just a breach up already, but just to kind of get the all-in-one here. Then you can pretty much just kind of stay right at the edge of the breach. Your Herald's a chain enough to hit anything that's behind you. I got stuck. What I try to do for this is, and if you run Breachstones enough, you'll kind of get the layout. But I try to just make sure to refresh my charge staff a little bit before you get to like where all the loot drops, the end of the breach. Just so it'll be up for Zest, and I don't have to spend power charges doing that while I'm holding right click and trying to kill him. You definitely don't need to do that, but it just speeds up the fight to basically go in buffed already. And just to show the scaling and stuff. Like, you can kind of see how big of a difference Rage makes. Because I've got Ice Bite up basically all the time. Innervate going up gets me to like 1.5 million. But we get up to like 1.7 if we're able to actually stack Rage. It's just kind of hard to do because we attack once and everything's dead. So the on melee hit doesn't really work. Okay. So like this is refreshed, so I've got more than enough time to kill this dude before it drops.
We that dreamed. We nightmare.
So we're basically just gonna hold right click, spam bells, and hit mana potions as we need them. I'm not really threatened by this. And he's gone. We did it. One mechanic. What's this one? I think that one might be worth something. Anyway, that's pretty much it for the build. If you got any questions, put them in the comments, I guess. And I'll be linking a POB that's updated for where the build currently is. Thanks. Have a good one.